Hi folks, Robert O'Brien from O'Brien Guitars and the Luthier Academy here. There seems to be a lot of chatter on the internet and other sources these days about monopole mobility. Well, first of all, let me see if I can help you define it, and then second of all, I'll help you determine how to measure it. So basically, monopole mobility is an indicator of how responsive the guitar soundboard is for your instrument. Basically, it's a calculation that approximates average admittance, often denoted by Y, which is a measure of how much velocity, and hence sound, you get in a soundboard from the force exerted by the oscillating strings. Now, this term was invented by Trevor Gore, and if you want to get down into the nitty-gritty and go down the rabbit hole, go study Trevor Gore's teachings on monopole mobility and a bunch of other factors that will help you make a better guitar. And there's a little bit of math involved here. Basically, the formula for calculating monopole mobility is Y equals 1 over the square root of K times M. Now, Y is monopole mobility, K is the stiffness, and M is the mass. Now, that's probably a lot more information than you wanted to receive at this point. But let me see if I can simplify it for you. Let's go over to the bench, and I'm going to show you how I measure monopole mobility, put it through the formulas to determine how responsive the guitar top is. So to measure monopole mobility, you have to use a formula, and the formula is Y equals 1 over the square root of K times M. Now, Y is the monopole mobility, K is the stiffness, and M is the mass. Now, remember that the effective mass of the soundboard is measured in kilograms, and the force is 9.81 newtons. The stiffness is measured in newtons force per meter of deflection. Now, we're going to apply a force using a 1 kilogram mass, and the force it applies, and a force equals mass times acceleration, the force it applies is 1 kilogram times the acceleration due to gravity, which equals 9.81 meters per second squared. So the force I'm applying with my 1 kilogram mass is 9.81 newtons. So first thing we need to do is find out what K is, in other words, the stiffness. To do that, I'm going to be using what I call a monopole mobility jig. This was made by a former student of mine. In fact, it's the same person that does the vacuum clamps for me, Dan Langhofer at Carico.com. I'll put a link in the video description. If you are so inclined, you can go ahead and pick up this deflection jig here for measuring monopole mobility. So the first thing we need to do is measure the deflection. And the way I do that is just turn on the digital caliper here, make sure it's zeroed out, and then I come in with a weight. In my case, I'm using exactly 1 kilo, and this does come with the jig here. And just put it into this cup on top of the dial caliper here, and then measure the deflection here, and I'm coming out at 0.27 millimeters. Make sure that you do measure it in millimeters. Another way to do that would be to go ahead and put your weight on there, zero it out, and then remove the weight, and then that will give you a number as well. I usually do one of each and kind of compare the two numbers and find an average if I need to. Now remember, the effective mass of the soundboard is measured in kilos, and the force is 9.81 newtons. The deflection is 0.27 millimeters. So remember that number. So with that measurement, we can now put it into our formula to solve for K. K, or the stiffness, equals the force, in our case 1 kilo, divided by the deflection, in our case 0.27. So make a note of that number. So the next thing we need to do is solve for M, or the effective mass of the soundboard. And to do that, we use the formula K, which is our stiffness. And that's what we worked out before, divided by 2 pi times the resonant frequency squared. And that's just an inversion of a simple spring mass resonator equation, which is 1 over 2 pi times the square root of K over M. Now, I know this is a lot of math, so you guys don't get too worried about this. I'm going to give you a solution for that here at the end of the video. So to do that, we need to measure the uncoupled monopole frequency. So what you can do is just loosen the strings, take an old yogurt cup or something and set in there, make sure it's kind of sitting in there nice and good so it's not rattling around, and plug the sound hole. That's going to allow us to tap and measure the uncoupled top frequency. In other words, it's not influenced by the resonant frequency of the box or the back. Another way is to use a sound hole plug. This one was made by a former student of mine, Jeff Knorr, up there in Michigan, and it just slides right under the strings right here. I don't even have to loosen the strings, and just plugs that sound hole for me like that. So to capture the frequency of the uncoupled top, I'm using an app on my computer here called Guitar Tap. Now, this was developed by a former student of mine, David Smith, out there in Oregon. It's a free download, folks. However, if you get it for the Mac, it's free download for PCs. If you get it for Mac, because of the way Apple and Mac distribute their products through the App Store, then you have to pay a nominal fee to help cover those expenses. But it's a fantastic app that will help you capture frequencies for doing monopole mobility and other things. They help you measure brace material, soundboard material, help you determine thicknesses, all that kind of stuff. Free app for those that want it. You can use the onboard microphone here. It works fantastic. I'm using a USB mic, but you don't have to. I've tested it with and without, and it's very, very accurate either way. It's available for iPhones, for Macs, MacBooks, and also for iPads. I mean, it's just a great app. And thank you very much, David Smith, for doing that. I'll put a link in the video description below. But basically what I'm going to do is just tap on it. You can just use the fleshy part of your thumb, hold the guitar in front of your mic, and just tap it like that. Or you could use a fancy thing like this that I got from Simone and Martino from the Hub of Acoustics, a couple of buddies of mine over there in Italy that also give classes around the world about how to do this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to tap it a few times. I'll tell you what, let me just, there we go, new tap. All right, and my uncoupled top frequency is coming in at 180.7. So hopefully you're still with me and don't have that deer in the headlight look. But with those numbers, K and M, K being stiffness, M being mass, we can put it through the formula where Y in monopole mobility equals 1 over the square root of K, stiffness, times M, which is our mass. That's going to give us some monopole mobility. The higher the number, the more responsive the instrument is, and anything above 11 or 12 in the acoustic guitar or steel string guitar world, you're starting to get into the responsive guitar range. And anything above 20 for a classical guitar, you're starting to get into the responsive realm for classicals. Just did the math off camera here, and the monopole mobility number for this particular guitar is 31.3. And according to Trevor Gore, anything above about 20, you're starting to get into the very responsive instrument, and this is basically off the charts. So, mission accomplished on this guitar. Now, I told you I was going to give you a solution for the math. For you guys that don't like math, and I'm not a math person, if you go out to Carico.com, there is a spreadsheet that if you get the monopole mobility rig that I showed you there behind me, there's a downloadable spreadsheet that does all the math for you. All you have to do is plug in the force, which in my case is 1 kilo, and then the deflection amount, and you plug that in with the uncoupled top resonance, and then that will spit out the monopole mobility number for you. Also, coming very, very soon to the Luthier Academy website is a whole bunch of apps designed by Trevor Gore and Rick Malloy out there in the Washington, Seattle area. Thank you very much to Trevor and Rick for working on this, but I'll put some links down in the video description to those as well. That there's going to be a bunch of apps, the 4 Degrees of Freedom app, calculations, the wood properties calculations, monopole mobility, and a bunch of other stuff that Rick and Trevor have been working on for the Luthier Academy. So there you have it, probably much more information than you wanted. Happy building.